You up? Keith.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to do my Zoom. Come on up.
Me out real quick. Yeah. You and Joyce.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'd say what's up for a minute, but I wanted to bring you guys down some food and some cookies.
Just starting my Zoom,
So pretty much hushly hush.
I get your forks.
I made dinner, she made dessert, and I just looked at her and went, they all three full? Like, yeah, they're done eating. Are you done eating? Like, I'm done eating. No, I'm done eating. Let's do it, and I went, I'll hand them up. I know I'm going to eat some too.
That's a Pikachu. That does say Pikachu. I don't know. No, is this getting any darker?
No, it's actually not bad. It's just
Looks about the same.
yeah, it's doing pretty good.
That's good. That's not Scar too bad then. Guess what movie we got kids watching? Remember the Titans?
Greetings, everybody. The few that are here. I'm hoping more will join us tonight because this is going to be one of the more important Zooms. We're going to start talking tonight and tomorrow night, and possibly even Friday night. We're going to talk about bankers acceptance. So that's one of the big questions everybody's got. How do you do a banker's acceptance? So we're going to learn tonight. Banker's acceptance is just your, it's like submitting an invoice or a bill of exchange, letter of credit. They're all basically about the same thing. So we're going to learn about that. It's like I try to explain to people, it's not ever going to be the same for everybody. When we do a banker's acceptance, it's going to be dependent upon the situation and what needs to be affected. So we really have to comprehend. The thing about the languages we're using is that they use like wording in different areas. In the UCC, they talk about a draft of an order to pay. That's the same thing as a letter of credit. It's the same thing as a banker's acceptance. It's just a matter of how you put it forth and how you record it and everything, and the language you use, the particular reason you need to do such a thing. And again, like I said, you're going to have to write it up just like a regular corporate invoice. But in that, we're going to be learning how to contract the terms and conditions in there through language that is expressed in Senate document number 43, where they talk about contracts payable in gold. And that's the point of this, is trying to learn how to convert the language of the fiat currency into what you need it to do for you. You have to learn how to make it benefit you. So when we start talking about bankers' acceptance, thank you.
Can I bother you for that one?
When we talk about bankers' acceptance, that's what it is. We've got to get the bankers to accept it, no matter what form it's in, whether you want to call it a letter of credit, a trade acceptance, a banker's acceptance, letter of credit, whatever. We've got to get that banker to accept it.
That's a
And
trade acceptance.
And the way we get them to accept it is by knowing what we're doing and being able to convey that, so that it's just a transaction. That's all it is. We're not trying to do anything illegal, unlawful. We know that it's in probate. We want it out of probate because that means somebody else is administering the estate. We are age of majority, competent and sound mind and body. We wish to delegate our own affairs now. What do we need to do to remove it from probate and have it operate as a transitional credit, just like a regular developing nation? We're not a developing nation, but we're developing as a self-governing body now because we are no longer governed by the government. So, let me pull it up here. And you guys will realize that another one of my favorite sites when I'm doing the research in regards to law is, aside from Cornell, I like Investopedia. Investopedia is a good site to go get your definitions from. They're going to be pretty critical in regards to the commercial system to be accurate. So the words and everything in here are specific. And so it says, when a merchant needs financing to buy products. And when we talk about merchants, we're talking about people that buy and sell. And so it needs financing to buy products from somebody who is selling them. Okay, so your merchant agreements are between the buyer and the seller. Okay, that's that privity. It's between them to do a banker's acceptance. In other words, it's basically setting up a promissory note. Same thing again. It's a promissory note. It's a note. Well, when you look at the UCC definition, which we will hear in a minute, it tells us that a note is a promise to pay if it's this way, or it's a order to pay if it's done this way. And so that Senate document 43 and learning how to contract in those different ways is important. That's the whole problem, is we're not drafting the order to pay. We're signing orders to pay that somebody else has already drawn up based on a draft that we don't know where it came from. We now need to learn how to make our own drafts, and that's it. That's removal from probate, so we can make our own draft based on what's known as special drawing rights. So when a merchant needs financing to buy products, suppliers, the seller, often rely on the business's reputation when deciding whether to extend it credit. So are these bankers, when they say they are extending credit, are they selling you a line of bullshit? They are, because they don't have credit to extend. They can't extend their own credit. They have to get it from a supplier. Well, the only way they can go to a supplier to get it is through that Federal Reserve window. But the problem is, people don't realize they're the ones that have the drawing rights initially. And then when they draw that signature, they're not assigning it properly. They're not assigning the order to pay. They're handing that duty over to the bank, and the bank drafts the order to pay and makes it us that is supposed to pay. So we have to learn how to turn that around. And this is relatively easy to do when the supplier has worked with the same buyers for years. Well, this government has worked with the people for years. Or they have a strong standing in the industry. Well, the only standing they have in the international forum is that of the people, and it's recognized in the international people that no nation can come about except upon the shoulders of the people. Period. It's a concept of developing nations. Did you ever get one?
Yeah, I just put my note.
Okay.
Question, what do you mean by it cannot be done except for being built on the shoulders of the people?
Because the people are the ones that delegate the power to the government.
Okay. I just want
When the business is half the world away, however, lending can be a riskier proposition. One way to resolve this issue is the use of a banker's acceptance. So let's read what this banker's acceptance is. That page there, and I'll post both of these links. This is Banker's Acceptance 101. It's a little bit lengthier, but when we look at banker's acceptance, it is the actual action of giving the banker your letter, your draft, your intent. It's a letter of intent. Same thing, letter of credit, letter of intent, promissory note, a draft of order to pay. They're all the same thing synonymously, but they're slightly different depending on how you word them, how you qualify the phrases, how you do the dates and times and names. What is a banker's acceptance? Banker's acceptance is a negotiable piece of paper, commercial paper for the fiat currency. Negotiable instrument is the legal tender that the United States uses. It's in fact what the entire international forum uses. Negotiable instruments is legal tender. Negotiable instruments as in law of war and peace. It's when people sit down to the table to negotiate. Otherwise, if you're already in peace, there are no negotiations. What is done is what ought be done. There is nothing new under the sun. So it says it's a negotiable piece of paper that functions like a post-dated check. A post-dated check sounds just like a promissory note, doesn't it? Just like I've been saying, they're all synonymous. A bank, rather than an account holder, guarantees the payment. So in this probate system that's operating under obligations of the United States, who has a debt previously contracted with the Federal Reserve to issue notes, known as obligations and other securities of the United States, and they can be expressed through stamps and other representatives of value. Other representatives of value, which are synonymous with those notes, such as banker's acceptances, post-dated checks, promissory notes, bills of exchange. They're all an expression of value. And they're all an obligation of the United States as long as you qualify the phrases that you use. So I am not the banker. I am an account holder, and it is a private trust account. And I am going to assign a bank who has a trustee that can qualify my document, not with a notary, but with a medallion stamp signature guarantee, saying that the qualifications on the document are warranted. Banker's acceptances, also known as, look at that, bills of exchange, are used by companies, functions as post-dated checks. They're also known as bills of exchange. You getting it, people? When they sit there and say you can't use a bill of exchange, excuse me? I'm sorry, you can't use a post-dated check. Excuse me? They're telling you your qualifying phrases are not
Hey
accurate.
Keith, you're going in and out.
Okay. What did you lose, folks?
You were talking about the bill of exchange and about you were saying that about I don't know, it just you was just when you was talking you were going in.
Okay. Well, the basics of it is, like I said earlier, it's all synonymous, folks. It's all commercial paper. All you have to do is learn how to qualify the phrases on the commercial paper. If it's presented to you, you have the right to line item veto through it, override it, and then initial it. And that's a qualification. Now they have to disqualify it or accept it in their approval. If they disqualify it, they don't have to approve it. If they can't disqualify it, then they have to approve. And they are
Sounds
used
like a
by
form of abatement. Oh, sorry,
yes,
Keith.
yes. That's basically what it is. In the obverse, you're not abating anything. You're supposed to be ratifying it. In other words, improving it, perfecting what's wrong. In that perfection, if it's perfected, they can't rebut it. And that's what we're talking about, is handing over a perfected instrument. That way they can't rebut it. The banker has to accept it. That's why I said we have to know how to write it so that they can accept it, because they can't give us a legal determination. They can't give us legal advice, and communication is legal advice.
Say something Keith, on that.
Say that again. All right. Well, anyway, so it says bankers, or it says, are used by companies as a relatively safe form of payment. So when we're talking about species, we're talking about paper species or coin. When we're talking about form, we're talking about the form of the paper or the form of the coin. Is it a United States form of coin, or is it a French form of coin, or is it a English form of coin, or is it a Mexican form of coin? If it's commercial paper, within any financial system, is it a banker's acceptance? Is it a post-dated check? What form? Who is? Okay, something happened and shut down the whole Zoom.
Yeah. So what I was saying, they got a statute in Ohio, and they got one in federal. It's called errors, omissions, mistakes, and defects.
Yes.
So it says anybody who has, they can file a petition if there's an instrument that has errors, omissions, it's called errors, omissions, mistakes, and defects. So what I was doing, I was helping people like get passports. So what we would do is we would name the affidavit, any errors, omissions, and defects, please identify. And we would make them specify the language, or we would put the language in there and make them sign under the penalty of perjury. Nobody would deal under that language. So what they would do, they would just qualify the document itself.
Right. And that's what we're doing, is qualifying the document, because they can't accept payment in gold or silver. If they can't accept payment in gold or silver, it tells us they can't give anything, because it is substance over form. If they have no substance, then their form cannot be qualified. Therefore, they have to qualify ours. Therefore, we have to speak the truth so it can be qualified. Does that make sense? So anyway, we're
Yes.
talking about, let me switch back over to banker's acceptance. We're talking about the form. And this is why I say we don't have to worry about filling out their forms. What we have to do is get the language off those forms and draw it up or draft it up in a proper order of instructions to make them do what they're supposed to do by fiduciary assignments. And that is the payment. That is the transaction. Payment is the transaction. We have no way to pay because we can't fill out their forms and have them do what we want them to do. Those forms have prerequisites that we can't qualify. Therefore, we have to take the language off of those forms and qualify it by line item veto and putting in the right terms, making it a qualification to follow the correct process, showing that it's already paid. It's a matter of credit. It's where it extends from. The government has no credit, has no assets because the people haven't given them assets. They've only given them credit to assert their laws so long as they do so appropriately. Bankers' acceptances can also be short-term debt instruments, similar to U.S. Treasury bills, promissory notes, post-dated checks, things like that. They can also be those short-term things. That's what the dates and everything are all about. That trade at a discount to face value. And that's that fractional banking that they're operating in. That's what that commercial paper is. That's why I say, again, we have to get out of that, those qualifications for the face value, because you're already taking, you're going into a gambling house and you're trading 50-1 for house chips that you can't spend outside the house. And then if you try to convert them in another house of the same ownership, I'm sorry, you can't. They're different chips. So it's a big casino gambling house. That's all it is. The next thing it says, understanding bankers' acceptance for the company that issues it. In other words, if I'm going to issue a banker's acceptance is a way to pay for a purchase without borrowing to do so. And like I said, payment is not handing something over. It's getting them to understand the instructions are already made. It's already a transaction that's supposed to be taken care of. It's not a matter of me handing over money. It's a matter of transferring the credits. And they transferred them out, and now they're demanding them back from me. It's not a matter of transferring them out and demanding from me. It's a matter of transferring them out and then balancing the book. That's it. A banker's acceptance requires the bank to pay the holder a set amount of money on a set date. This is the drawing right I was just telling you about that the bankers are using when you go in and fill out a loan. They're using that. That loan is a drawing right. It's a banker's acceptance. You're the one qualifying it. You're the one that's accepting it as a banker and then lending the credit for the drawing rights. And they say, okay, well, thanks. And then they convert it to their drawing rights. So then they go get the credits. They deposit it in a cloned account under your name, but it's their credit because you gave it to them. And then they say, okay, now according to the contract, you owe us Federal Reserve notes, so we can take them back and return them to the Federal Reserve. There were two transactions that occurred there, and you didn't know shit from your mouth, nothing, because you don't know anything about bankers. They're the ones giving you the document. You're qualifying it. That's a banker's acceptance. Banker's acceptance are most commonly issued 90 days before the date of maturity, but can mature at any later date from 1 to 180 days. So when you do that banker's acceptance and then they take it and they turn around and they don't get that payment within 90 days, guess what? They turn around and sell it. That sucker goes out from that time forth as a swap. It's a credit default swap, and everybody's buying a credit default swap. And then when you miss one payment, they come and try to foreclose on you. Bankers acceptance are most commonly issued 90 days, up from 1 to 180 days. They are typically issued in multiples of $100,000. So you don't do a banker's acceptance for $150,000. You don't do it for $225,000. You do it for $500,000. You do it for $1 million. You do it for $100 million. You don't do it for $1,000 or $153,748. You do it for the even $100,000. Same with your deposit to the bank. If you deposit $10,000 or if you deposit more than $10,000, there's a red flag that goes up. If you withdraw $10,000 or more, there's a red flag that goes up. Bankers acceptances are issued at a discount to their face value. So if you want the bank to accept your banker's acceptance, you have to give it an overvalue for what you want out of it, so the banker gets some. You get it? You have to discount some. That means you have to take some off and give it to them. You have to allow them to do their fraud in that system. They can go ahead and keep doing that fraud in their system. You're going to clear your name out of it. Thus, like a bond, they can earn a return. Otherwise, they may not be in business the next day when you need to go back to have a banker's acceptance done for your cousin or your nephew or your son or daughter or something. You need people that are knowledgeable of this. And the only way they can be knowledgeable is to keep in practice. So they have to be able to take advantage of people in the banking system and let those that be fooled be fooled. Those that want to come out of her, do it. This is understanding you're the banker, not them. They also can be traded like bonds, swaps, credit default swaps in the secondary money market. Like I said earlier, there is no penalty for cashing them in early. No penalty for cashing them in early. This is like with those 401ks and stuff. When they say, well, you cash them in earlier, you're going to get penalty. I don't think so. Not if I put my banker's acceptance on it. Learn how to qualify it. There is no penalty for cashing them except for the lost interest that would have been earned had they been held until their maturity dates. So you can't take a 30-year extenuous bond and call it back early by accelerating it in 10 years and then say, well, I still have this 20 years worth of interest. You can only calculate the 10 years. History of bankers' acceptances have been around since the 12th century. What happened in the 12th century, folks? Just like now, bank acceptances were used as a method of facilitating trade. Facilitating trade. And they are telling you the truth. They are not telling you that it facilitated debt. It facilitated trade. In the 18th century, that's because on the document, you qualify it as an equal consideration, equal benefit, because it is a contract. It is a very valid contract. In the 18th and 19th centuries, bankers' acceptances started to become an actively traded market. So that's when the commercial paper started. Because now, if you didn't know how to qualify it, but there was some qualifying information we could gamble on. See what they did? They recognized that it wasn't a qualified document, but they could qualify it with this, this, or this, and therefore it's all insurance. Yeah, that's what it is. It's insurance from that time forth, folks. The U.S. launched the Federal Reserve in the early 1900s to help create bankers' acceptances that compete with London's. Did we learn much about those bankers' acceptances? Or did they just start issuing a bunch of Federal Reserve notes that, here, you get to use these? And everybody just gladly accepted it. That's the problem. You got to quit. The Federal's goal was to boost U.S. trade, not your trade. They had no reason to even include you in their contract. None. And it was given the authority to purchase certain bankers' acceptances. Where was it given this authority? In and amongst themselves only. In and amongst themselves only. While the Fed still buys government bonds, it no longer buys bankers' acceptances. So what we do is we get the government bond and we do the banker's acceptance and show that it's a debt previously contracted, and now it's qualified as such. Because I'm the holder in due course. You see that name on it? You know, the one you've been pushing around in all your documents all this time without an actual trademark and been using it to make money in that trademark system. Bankers' acceptance as checks. Remember we spoke earlier as a post-dated check. Now we're talking as checks because it's about the times, the dates and times that you put on there, the names and the locations and the assets and the transfer values. Bankers' acceptances like certified checks, not just any old check, a certified check, are a relatively safe form of payment for both sides of a transaction because it cannot be accepted unless all of the terms and conditions on it are qualified. The money owed is guaranteed to be paid on the date specified on the bill. The specification on the bill is the dates that were enacted already. What is done is what ought to be done. There is nothing new under the sun, according to HJR 192, whatever you need to use, it's already done. What you're doing is failing to transfer it according to the law. This is the proper transfer. Do it now. It's out of balance. The use of bankers' acceptances is the most common in international trade transactions, not in internal commerce. If you're going to get caught up in the internal commerce, and that's why I get belligerent with people that want to sit there and do the UCC and the 1099 and all this and say, well, you got to do this and Patrick Devine this and Patrick Devine that. I don't care. I talked to Patrick Devine many times. And like I said, that's a licensing. That's internal commerce. That is not trade. You are not doing the proper banker's acceptance. You are doing checks and drafts and all this other shit that somebody else is qualifying because you're doing them on their qualified forms, Office of Management and Budget. It's their budget, not yours. The use of banker's acceptance is most common in international trade transactions. A buyer with an importing business can issue a banker's acceptance with the date after shipment is due to be delivered, and the seller with an exporting business will have the payment instrument in hand before finalizing the shipment. The seller with an exporting business. Now, if the seller is Ford Motor Company, and Ford Motor Company is dependent upon the United States and the obligations of the United States to extend its, quote, bankers' acceptances, known as loan applications, then they are in fact obligated the same as the United States. So when you get that shipping bill or that custom order document from the manufacturing company, you have to qualify that document with the right laws and codes and everything, showing that it's already prepaid through a prior banker's acceptance already held. And that's by attaching that bond. All you got to do is get one of the bonds attached to it. There you go. Oh, and by the way, that car is $78,000. Here's a banker's acceptance for $100,000. I get the car, you get everything else. I guarantee you it's going to go over good. Learn how to contract, learn how to help them be healthy in that Federal Reserve System while you're healthy in your possessions. Remember, they're talking about finalizing the shipment. Very specific term here, shipment. It's not going to be delivered. It's not going to be entering the mail. It's not going to be transported. It's not going to be in transportation or traffic. It's a shipment. The person who is paid with a banker's acceptance may hold on to it until its maturity date in order to receive its full value, or it can sell it immediately at a discount to the face value. So when you give that Ford Motor Company that bill of exchange, that banker's acceptance, that post-dated check, or that certified check, whatever you end up giving it to them in the most immediate form, they can turn around and sell it for its face value. So they're going to give you a $78,000 vehicle, automobile, and you're going to give them banker's acceptance for $100,000. They can turn around and sell it at a discount for say $80,000. They just made $2,000 just for transferring a piece of paper, or they could do it for say $90,000, and then get some sucker to buy it for $90,000. Okay, there you go, $12,000 right there. And that's the way it's supposed to operate.
Can we just start using them?
Well, technically, that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's just that nobody
God
understands.
damn it, where do I get a book of them? Where do I get my book of banker's acceptances? Damn it. I got some bills to pay here.
Well, that's why I keep trying to impress upon everybody. You got to learn the words, because that's all it is. When you realize that they've converted everything into a commercial term somewhere along the lines. And that's why I said about the UPU. You need to go through and line item veto things and overwrite them with your initials. That's called a qualification. If they
You
just
could do that with any contract, right? Any offer. You could do that with any of their offers.
yes,
right?
they're offering you a banker's acceptance. You flip it around. You qualify it. Now they have to accept it. Now you're the banker. You're flipping it around and showing that you're the banker. They're coming at it as though they're the banker. You work with a banker or a bank. I'm the banker. You work with a bank. The only one that can get a qualification is the guy that needs to get something done.
I'm the banker. You work with the bank. I mean, I'm the bank.
No, you are a banker.
I'm a
You are
banker.
a banker. It is a verb. The bank is the place. Are you a place? No, you are the banker. You are the one that makes things happen. That car lot is not a bank, and it is not a banker. It works with a bank who has people that operate as trustees who can do banking transactions.
So what would they do with that banker's acceptance? Would they cash it at their bank? Would they discount it to their bank?
Correct. Correct.
Make
Correct.
it payable to the Fed and just cash
Correct.
that.
Correct.
They have options.
Yes.
Right. They can sell it. They can cash it.
You can help them out with a special drawing right and assign it to them to take it right to the Fed Reserve window and trade it with them for $100,000.
Right. Shit. Give me some of them damn things, man.
So you better learn how to write them up. And again, I said it's every independent situation. So anyway, we're running out of time. We're going to be back at it again tomorrow night with banker's acceptance again. It's a deep subject, and we need to learn how to write this stuff up. So thank you.
I was going to say.
It's going to be the majority of everything we do, folks. Like I said, it's a check, a certified check. It's a draft of an order to pay. It's a letter of credit, a bill of exchange. It's all of them. It's how you write it, how you qualify it. In the meantime, God bless. Thanks for joining me. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. I'll post everything when I get done here, and it'll be on my YouTube, everything. Please share it. Love y'all.
I got one question. How do you actually qualify it?
The words.
Just the words?
Just the word.